In the darkness of a cold park, a lonely billionaire finds a glimmer of hope from a young girl and 3 homeless children. A true story of compassion, fate, and the power of family love. Can a frozen heart melt to build a warm home? Explore the touching journey of Daniel and Isabella, where old wounds are healed by innocent smiles. It was supposed to be just an ordinary morning jog, a familiar ritual like the breath of billionaire Daniel Martinez, a man so wealthy that people rumored each of his steps echoed with the clinking of gold and silver. But that day, Stumptown Park, usually peaceful like an oil painting with chirping birds and breezes caressing ancient treetops, transformed into the stage for a fateful drama. Daniel, in simple sportswear yet exuding an air of authority, walked slowly, hands deep in his pockets, his mind drifting like clouds in the sky. He had no inkling that, under the shade of an old oak tree, destiny was lurking, ready to cast an unexpected net. As his keen eyes glanced over an old wooden bench, at first, he thought it was just a pile of rags discarded by the night's wind. But then, as if tugged by an invisible thread, he stopped, turned back, and looked closer. Those fragile blankets, they were alive. They stirred faintly, like weak butterflies struggling to break free from their cocoons. Daniel's heart pounded, not from exhaustion after the long run, but from a strange premonition rising in his chest, a feeling only those seasoned by life's storms could understand. He approached, each step resounding with the beat of his own heart. And then, the sight before him struck like a sharp blade slicing through the morning mist. A young girl, perhaps just touching 19 springs, lay curled on the bench, motionless as a forgotten statue. Her clothes were tattered and filthy, as if battered by the tempests of life. Her face was pale as a waning moon, eyes tightly shut, her breath so faint it seemed the wind could snatch it away at any moment. But what stopped Daniel's heart wasn't the girl, but the 3 tiny beings beside her, 3 children, wrapped in thin blankets, crying pitifully like baby birds fallen from their nest. Their tiny hands reached out, trembling with cold, their tear-filled eyes sparkling like shattered crystals, reflecting fear and hunger. Daniel stood frozen, his mind spinning like a whirlwind. Call the police. Wait for someone else to help. But the children's cries grew louder, one of them coughing harshly as if their tiny lungs were screaming for life. There was no time to hesitate. Like a savior summoned by fate, he bent down, gently lifting each child, cradling them against his broad chest, a chest that once held only the solitude of a wealthy man living alone. Then he carefully lifted the girl. She was so light he felt as if he were holding a dry leaf fallen in winter. She didn't wake, didn't stir, like a lost angel exhausted from a long journey. Ignoring the curious stares and whispers from the crowd on the street, those stunned to see a renowned billionaire carrying ragged children and a homeless girl, Daniel hurried to his luxurious car. He placed them in the back seat, his hands trembling on the steering wheel not from fear, but from an overwhelming sensation. This was no coincidence. Fate had chosen him, entrusted him with this mission. The car sped toward Lanton Mansion, where massive black gates slowly opened like the wings of a giant eagle welcoming its king home. The mansion was quiet as usual, with birds chirping in the lush garden and morning sunlight glinting on the glass windows. But today, the air in that vast house suddenly felt different. Claire, the loyal housekeeper who had served Daniel for over 15 years, stood by the window, her eyes widening in shock as she saw her master rush out of the car with 3 children in his arms and an unconscious girl on his back. "Sir, what's happening? Who are they?" she exclaimed, her voice quivering like dry leaves in the wind. "No time to explain, Claire." Daniel replied, his tone firm but his eyes brimming with concern. "Get warm blankets, hot water, and call the doctor immediately." They laid the girl gently on the plush sofa in the luxurious living room, a space once filled only with the echo of Daniel's solitary footsteps. The children were placed on a soft rug near the fireplace, where the crackling flames sang a lullaby to chase away the bone-chilling cold they had endured. Claire hurriedly draped blankets over them, fetching warm bottles of milk from the kitchen. Daniel held one child, tenderly helping it feed, its tiny lips eagerly grasping the bottle as if it were the last drop of water in a barren desert. "They're so hungry," Claire whispered, her eyes welling up. Daniel nodded, his voice deep like waves crashing on the shore. I found them in the park. The girl fainted, the children were freezing and terrified. When the family doctor, Dr. Edward, arrived, he examined each one with the care of a jeweler inspecting a precious gem. After a while, he looked up at Daniel and Claire, his eyes grave. They're weak, but alive. The girl has severe hypoglycemia and dehydration, she needs rest, food, and special care. The children are underweight, they need better nutrition. Daniel sat down, his gaze fixed on the sleeping children, their tiny chests rising and falling like fragile petals swaying in the breeze. The young girl remained unconscious, her face now peaceful yet so still it stirred the heart. Prepare a room for her, Daniel told Claire, his voice soft but resolute like a deep river. And one for the children. Claire nodded slowly, unable to hide her curiosity. But sir, will they stay here? Daniel didn't answer right away. He only gazed at the sleeping girl, his eyes piercing through the fog of the past as if searching for an answer. I don't know who they are, he said softly, his voice warm like a bell tolling in a cathedral. But now, they're safe. And that's what matters most. And when that girl awoke from her long slumber, the heartbreaking truth of her story left Daniel, a man who thought he'd seen all of life's ups and downs, speechless. But that's another chapter, another secret, one only those patient enough to listen can uncover. Welcome to the wondrous stories of life, where compassion can melt even the iciest of hearts. Claire stood silently, her eyes like a window opening to a new horizon as she looked at her master, Daniel Martinez, the man who, for all the years she served him, had been just a quiet shadow in the vast mansion. That house, once a fortress of solitude where every corner echoed with the sighs of sorrow, now sprang to life. The soft breaths of tiny beings blended with a magical light, not the light of the sun, but a spark of hope shimmering like precious gems falling from heaven. The sun had risen to its peak, radiant like a king draped in golden robes, when Isabella gently opened her eyes. In that first moment, she thought she had stumbled into a lavish dream, the bed soft as clouds, pristine sheets smelling of fresh sunshine, and somewhere a warm aroma of food wafting like a mother's gentle breath. But then, like a fierce wave crashing unexpectedly onto the shore, panic surged within her. The children, she gasped, her breath ragged like wind lost in a deep forest. She sprang up, so fast her head spun like a top in a storm, her eyes darting around in search. And then, she saw them, 3 little angels lying peacefully in a small crib, wrapped in clean clothes, their sleep as calm as still water under moonlight. Isabella rushed to them, her trembling legs like dry branches before the wind, lifting Blue first, clutching her close as if holding her entire sky. Then Naomi, and Lynn, tears streamed down her face like a spring, soaking her gaunt cheeks as she pulled all 3 into her frail yet resolute embrace. Her hands shook, her fragile body seeming as if it could dissolve like morning mist, but her heart beat fiercely, full of fear and love. Where am I? Who brought us here? She whispered, her voice small like leaves falling in the dark night. Just then, the door creaked open, slowly like a theater curtain unveiling a fateful figure. Daniel stood there, at the threshold, silent as a steadfast mountain amid a tempest. His face was calm, but his eyes glowed with deep concern, like a lake mirroring a sky about to rain. You're safe now, he said, his voice warm and resonant like a bell tolling from afar. Here, no one can harm you. Isabella shrank back, clutching the children like a mother bird shielding her nest from a storm. Her eyes widened, glistening with tears, brimming with fear. Please, don't take them from me, she choked, her voice breaking like the sob of rain on an old roof. We didn't steal. We're just tired, just trying to survive. Daniel took a step forward, his voice gentle yet steady like a deep river. No one's accusing you. I found you in the park, unconscious, the children crying desperately. I brought you here to help, not to separate you. Isabella bowed her head, ashamed and pained like a flower trampled under rain. Her legs gave way, she knelt on the floor, still holding the children tightly, the only fragments of her soul left in this world. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice faint like wine through leaf gaps. I didn't want this. I just wanted them to live. Daniel knelt beside her, not touching, but his presence like a lighthouse in a midnight sea, radiating the glow of compassion. It's all right, he said, his voice soft like waves lapping at the sand. They're alive. You're alive. That's what matters most. Isabella's tears poured forth, not in drops but like a river bursting its banks, washing away the silent months since her mother's passing, since the cold streets became her only home. Daniel didn't touch her, but his stillness, his tender kindness, was like an invisible arm lifting her from the abyss. After a few minutes, she wiped her tears with a tattered sleeve, saying softly, I'm Isabella. These are my siblings. They're not my children, but they're all I have. Daniel nodded, his eyes shining with profound understanding like a starry night sky. I'm Daniel. You don't need to tell me everything now. Just rest. Isabella looked at him, her weary eyes tinged with doubt. She wanted to believe, but life had taught her that trust was a luxury like gold in a pauper's hand. And then, a flicker of warmth crept into her chest, perhaps hope, a light she'd long forgotten. She sat by the window, watching the sunset like a fiery painting slowly closing the day. The children slept soundly in their crib, full from the warm milk Claire had prepared, their sleep peaceful like swallows gliding across a blue sky. For the first time in months, her heart ceased beating in fear. Claire stepped in quietly, holding a steaming bowl of pumpkin soup, its aroma rising like a childhood lullaby. She set it on the table beside Isabella and sat across from her, her eyes gentle as a full moon. You didn't eat much this morning, she said, her voice warm like a fire in a winter night. Try this, pumpkin soup, soft and warm for your stomach. Isabella nodded shyly, murmuring, thank you. Claire smiled, the smile of a mother seasoned by years of wind and frost. Isabella took a small spoonful, the sweet warmth flooding her mouth, seeping into her chest, not just filling her stomach but soothing her tattered soul. They sat in silence for a while, a stillness deep as the ocean floor. Then Claire spoke softly, her voice like falling leaves, you're so brave. At your age, most girls are wrestling with books and exams, yet here you are, caring for 3 little ones like a great mother. Isabella lowered her head, her thin, scratched hands trembling. They're not my children, she whispered. They're my siblings. Claire's eyes widened, glowing with astonishment and sympathy. Our mother, Nicole, died giving birth to them. She bled too much, the nurses couldn't save her. Isabella's voice quivered like a branch in the wind, but she pressed on, as if the story were a burden she needed to release. My stepfather left before the funeral. I haven't seen him since. It's just me and the kids. Claire pressed a hand to her chest, her heart tightening as if squeezed. I'm so sorry, dear, she said, her voice choked. Isabella nodded, her eyes dry but deep with pain. I tried staying in school, but they cried all night. I couldn't focus. The principal said I had to choose. Claire's eyes blurred with tears. And you chose them. I had to, Isabella replied, her voice small but firm like an unquenchable flame. I'm all they have. Silence enveloped them again, not heavy but profound, filled with respect. Claire looked at her, her gaze brimming with pride. You didn't just keep them alive, she said, her voice trembling. You led them through fire, through the darkness of this life. She reached across the table, grasping Isabella's hand, her thin but warm fingers like a promise. You're not alone anymore, Isabella. Not here. Isabella looked at Claire, her tired eyes flickering with light. She wasn't ready to fully believe, but for the first time, when someone spoke those words aloud, they rang true like a bell in a cathedral, and in her heart, hope bloomed faintly, like a flower in the depths of a cold winter. As night fell, gentle like an old blanket woven from threads of wind, Daniel softly knocked on Isabella's door, a sound as faint as the whisper of falling leaves. The children had just slipped into dreams, the room quiet like a still lake under moonlight. Claire looked up from the small chair near the crib, her eyes twinkling like an oil lamp burning through the years, nodding slightly. "Come in," she said, her voice warm as the breath of spring. Daniel stepped inside, hands deep in his pockets, his demeanor weary yet exuding the calm of a mountain standing firm against a storm. "I just wanted to check on you," he said, his voice deep like waves crashing on rocks. "Do you feel any better?" Isabella nodded slowly, her eyes glistening like morning dew. "Yes, thank you for everything." He sat down across from her, near the window where moonlight slipped through like strands of silver. "You don't need to thank me," he replied. "I only did what any beating heart should." Isabella lowered her head, her thin hands trembling on her lap, then looked up at him, her gaze deep as a well. "Most people don't," she said softly, her voice small but sharp like a blade cutting through the night. "They see us, then turn away as if we're invisible ghosts. Some growl, shooing us off like stray dogs. Others rush across the street, avoiding us as if touching our pain would burn them. No one ever stops, no one ever asks if we're okay." Daniel remained silent, his ears like an open gate, taking in every word she spoke, words that pierced his compassion like needles. "I tried," Isabella continued, her voice gentle but steady like a stream flowing over rocky cliffs. "After my mother died, I threw myself into small jobs like an ant hauling crumbs, cleaning, washing, anything to earn a few coins. Some days I brought home $20, like clutching a treasure chest. But other days, nothing, my stomach empty, only the children's cries keeping me company." She paused, her frail finger brushing the crib's edge, where the children stirred softly in sleep, like baby butterflies dreaming. "We couldn't afford rent. The landlord, cold as ice, gave us a week to leave. I knelt, begged him to wait until the kids were stronger, but he didn't care. So we drifted to a shelter, frigid as the earth's core, noisy as a battlefield, where people fought over scraps of bread. I didn't dare sleep, afraid someone would steal them away." Daniel frowned, his eyes darkening like a sky before a storm, but he listened, each word hammering at his heart. "Then we slept on the streets," Isabella went on, her voice quivering like a lost breeze. "I wrapped them in whatever I had, torn coats, old rags, even plastic bags. When rain poured down like the heavens weeping, I shielded them, letting myself soak. If we had just a bowl of thin porridge, I let them eat, drinking cold water to hush my screaming stomach. Some nights, I stayed awake, eyes stinging, just watching them breathe, afraid someone would snatch them, afraid they'd fall ill, or worse, afraid the darkness would swallow them forever." Her voice caught, trapped in her throat. "That day in the park, I was exhausted, my legs weak as dry grass. I just wanted to rest a moment, but then I fainted, lost to the world." Daniel leaned forward, his voice soft as drifting clouds. "And you didn't think anyone would come to save you?" Isabella shook her head slowly, her eyes empty as a barren desert. "No one ever did." He looked at her long and hard, his gaze deep as the ocean, then said gently, "But this time, someone did. I did." Tears welled in Isabella's eyes, not loud but silent like rain on an old roof, each drop soaking the pain she'd carried alone, fear, hunger, and a loneliness as cold as an endless winter. For the first time, someone saw her, and stayed. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Isabella's words burned like a quiet fire in his mind, refusing to fade. Her name, her eyes, the way she spoke, all like vague pieces of an old painting. And the name Nicole, Isabella's mother, echoed in him like a bell from a distant cathedral, stirring a buried memory. The next morning, he ordered his driver to take him to the old building where Isabella had said her mother worked, a small factory from Daniel's past empire, now desolate like a forgotten castle. The rusted gate creaked like time's lament, the faded sign like a blurred memory. Inside, a few dusty file boxes sat alone in the storage room, like mute witnesses of the past. Daniel opened a box, flipping through pages, hundreds of names, faces, dates flowing like a ceaseless river. Then he stopped, his breath catching as if squeezed tight. Nicole. Start date, July 2009. Position, janitor. End date, December 2016. He turned the page, and a photo appeared. His heart seemed to stop. It was her, the woman with kind eyes like moonlight, a smile gentle as spring wind, and short curly hair like ripples on water. He remembered that face clearly, because years ago, Nicole had saved his daughter, Emma. It was a company family day. Emma, still little then, had wandered too close to the pool, and in a flash, she fell into the water, quick as a shooting star dropping from the sky. No one saw, except Nicole. Without hesitation, she dove in, clothes drenched, pulling Emma to safety. The girl coughed, cried, but survived because of that woman. Daniel had thanked her, given her a small bonus, but life swept him onward, and the memory faded like ink on old paper. Now, years later, Nicole's daughter, Isabella, stood at his doorstep, hungry, homeless, bearing the weight of 3 children like an unwilling mother. Daniel sat down, clutching the photo to his chest, his voice a whisper like a prayer, "Nicole, you saved my child. And now, perhaps it's my turn to save yours." He left the old building, his heart heavy with tangled emotions, guilt, awe, and a belief in fate. Returning to the mansion, he saw Isabella in the garden with Claire and the kids. She looked serene, like a flower blooming in spring, unaware of the secret he'd just uncovered. From afar, he watched her smile faintly as blue playfully tugged her braid, sunlight bathing her face like a halo. For the first time, he saw Nicole in that smile, not just an act of kindness, but a deep thread of fate, an unspoken promise linking past and present. That night, the house sank into stillness, like a silent boat drifting on a midnight sea, without a ripple. The children had fallen asleep early, lost in the embrace of sweet dreams, while Claire had retreated to her small room, leaving space for quiet reflections. Isabella sat in the garden, her legs tucked in like a fledgling bird huddling against the cold wind, her sad eyes gazing up at a star-filled sky, gems twinkling like the galaxy's tears. Footsteps sounded behind her, steady and solid like the heartbeat of the earth, but she didn't turn around. She knew it was Daniel, the man with the presence of a mountain, steadfast and reserved. He sat beside her, wordless, like an old friend who understands without needing to speak. For a moment, they simply sat in silence, letting the wind whisper through the trees, telling nameless tales. Then Daniel spoke, his voice low and heavy like a bronze bell echoing from a distant cathedral. "Today, I discovered something about your mother." Isabella tilted her head slightly, a spark of surprise flashing in her eyes like a shooting star streaking across the sky. "You knew my mother?" Daniel nodded slowly, his gaze deep as the ocean floor. "Her name sounded familiar, but at first, I couldn't place it. Then memories flooded back, clear as sunlight chasing away the fog. Years ago, she worked at one of my factories, just a quiet janitor, kind-hearted, always arriving early like a swallow heralding spring." Isabella looked at him, bewildered like a deer lost in a dense forest. "One day," Daniel continued, his voice sinking like a river telling its tale, "I held a family day for the company. Emma, my daughter, only 6 then, playful as a little breeze, slipped and fell into the pool. No one noticed, except Nicole, your mother. She didn't hesitate, didn't pause to think, diving in like an angel spreading her wings, pulling Emma to safety. My girl survived because of her." Isabella raised a hand to her mouth, tears bursting forth like a spring, glistening under the moonlight. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice catching as if gripped by memory. "I thanked her, gave her a small bonus, then life swept me away. I never saw her again." Isabella blinked, trying to stem the tears like rain on an old roof. "She never told me." Daniel looked up at the sky, the stars like tiny flames illuminating his memories. "Maybe she didn't think it mattered, but to me, it was worth more than gold. Only now do I realize how profound it was." Isabella bowed her head, her frail hands clenching tightly on her lap. "But you said, survived. What happened to your daughter? Daniel's face darkened, a deep sorrow cloaking his eyes like nightfall. Emma died 2 years later, he said softly, his voice light as falling leaves. A car accident. A drunk driver. I wasn't there, busy with meetings in a far-off country, buried in numbers and contracts. Isabella whispered, her voice faint as a breath, I'm so sorry. That guilt has clung to me like an unshakable shadow, Daniel went on, his tone low like waves striking cliffs. I shut myself off, stopped going out, stopped opening my heart to anyone, convincing myself solitude was safer. But then I saw you in the park, with the kids, and something in me shattered, like an old brick wall crumbling under rain. Isabella's lips trembled, her eyes shimmering with tears. You've known pain too. He nodded, his gaze tender as a full moon. And so have you. The silence between them now felt different, not cold but deep as the sea, filled with memories, pain, and a new spark, like a fire crackling in a winter hearth. I think your mother left you more than 3 children, Daniel said, his voice gentle as a spring breeze. She passed on her courage, strong as a mountain standing against a storm. Isabella wiped her tears, a fragile smile blooming on her lips like an early flower. And maybe your daughter left you something too, she replied. What's that? He asked, curious as a child gazing at a starry sky. A reason to care again, she said, her voice warm like sunlight filtering through leaves. They sat there, beneath a glittering dome of stars, no longer a billionaire and a poor girl, but 2 lost souls finding each other, learning to breathe again amid old wounds. In the days that followed, the air in the mansion grew lighter, like a cool breeze after a long rain. Daniel remained busy with work, but each evening, he stopped by Isabella and the kids, bringing sparkling toys like jewels for the little ones, books fragrant with fresh paper for Isabella, and ensuring the table overflowed like a royal feast. This place was no longer just a safe haven, but was becoming a home, where life's cracks were mended with compassion. One afternoon, as the sun set in a blaze of red like a dying fire, Daniel sat beside Isabella in the warm living room, where the children played nearby, their laughter ringing like an angelic symphony. He looked at her, his face kind yet stern like an old father. I want to help you, Isabella, he said, his voice deep and warm as waves on the shore. You've carried so much, like a small mountain bearing the world on its shoulders. You shouldn't have to do it alone anymore. Isabella hesitated, her eyes glinting with doubt like a lake stirred by wind. I don't want to owe you anything. Daniel smiled, a smile gentle as morning light. It's not about debts, Isabella. It's what's right for you and the kids. She looked down at her hands, her thin fingers twisting like trembling dry branches. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. I'm not asking you to trust me fully, Daniel replied, his voice solid as a rock in a river. I just ask you to let me help you stand, to give you a chance to return to school, a chance to dream the dreams you once left behind. Isabella's eyes welled up, sparkling like stars reflected on water. I don't know where to start. I've been out of school too long. I don't think I can do it. You can, Daniel affirmed, his voice strong as wind sweeping through a field. You're smart, you've survived the darkest days, like a lamp that never goes out in a storm. Trust me, you have the strength to begin again. I'll cover your tuition, you won't need to worry about money. The kids will be well cared for while you study. Isabella swallowed hard, the idea as beautiful as a lavish dream, yet a hidden wall within her resisted. Why are you doing this for me? She asked softly, her voice faint as falling leaves. I'm just a stranger. You're not a stranger, Daniel answered, his eyes glowing like a warm flame. Your mother saved my daughter. Now it's my turn to help you, this is how I say thank you, how I repay a debt of fate. They sat there, in the gentle glow of dusk, no longer worlds apart, but like 2 lost boats finding harbor, writing a new chapter together, where hope blossomed on the once barren soil of pain. Isabella turned her face away, her heart heavy as a great stone pressing on her fragile chest. She didn't want anyone to see her weak, didn't want to become a broken-winged bird relying on others. But at that moment, like a warm breeze slipping through the door, Claire entered the room, her hands cradling a tray of fragrant tea, its scent wafting like spring buds blooming amid a cold winter. Her smile was gentle as a full moon, setting the tray on the table and sitting beside Isabella. Through aged yet sharp eyes, she instantly noticed the tension etched deep on the young girl's face, like cracks on an old wall worn by time. "Isabella," Claire began, her voice soft as a mother's lullaby, "I know accepting help is hard, like pulling a thorn lodged deep in your pride. I understand. But think beyond, think of the future, of those little children. They need you strong like a mountain standing firm against a tempest, and to do that, you must reach out and grasp the opportunity sparkling right before you." Isabella hesitated, her heart like a field torn between two opposing winds, the pride that had kept her standing alone through countless dark days, and the fear of failure, an invisible monster lurking in the shadows of her soul. Claire continued, her voice warm as a fire warming a cold night, "The greatest strength isn't in straining to carry everything, but in knowing when to let go, when to let others step in to share the load. You don't need to be a lone tree in a barren field anymore." Isabella blinked, trying to chase away the glistening tears like jewels, poised to spill from her lashes. "But what if I can't do it?" she asked softly, her voice trembling like dry leaves before the wind. "What if I fail?" "You won't fail," Claire replied, her tone comforting like a cool stream flowing through her heart. "Now, you have us, like wings soaring together in a vast sky. You're not alone anymore." Isabella looked at Daniel, then turned to Claire, her eyes wavering like a rippling lake. Finally, she nodded slowly, her voice faint as a whisper of wind, "All right. I'll try. I'll go back to school." A gentle smile bloomed on Daniel's face, warm as the first light of day. "You're choosing the right path," he said, his voice resonant like waves crashing on the shore. For the first time in long, endless years, a fragile spark of hope flickered in Isabella's heart. It wasn't the blazing fire she once dreamed of, but a tiny glow, delicate as a newborn butterfly, yet enough to guide her forward on the long journey ahead. Time passed, the mansion gradually becoming a true home, no longer a cold fortress of solitude. The children's laughter echoed through the rooms, clear as bells ringing in a cathedral, melting the icy walls that once surrounded the house. Isabella began studying again through online classes, taking small steps like dewdrops falling on petals, challenging but persistent. Each advance, though slow, made her feel like a green tree stretching toward the sun after a harsh winter, stronger, more alive. And for the first time in years, she dared to believe in something greater than survival, a future, a dream. On a peaceful afternoon, as sunlight draped everything like a golden blanket, Isabella stepped into the living room, holding a small sheet of paper, her hands trembling slightly like leaves before a breeze. The children were napping, their sleep serene as a waveless lake. Daniel sat by the window, his eyes tinged with sadness as he gazed at the garden, where memories and the present intertwined like branches weaving together. He thought of the long road they'd traveled, the wondrous changes in a time as brief as fate's blink. Isabella approached timidly, handing him the paper, her voice soft and shy like a fledgling bird's first chirp, "This is for you." Daniel took it, his eyes curious like a child looking at a starry sky, unsure what awaited. It was a drawing, simple yet beautiful like a poem written from the heart. The lines were scribbled like a child's footsteps, colors splashed like a wild natural canvas, but none of that mattered. In the center of the page, a man stood beside three small children, drawn with innocent love. At the top, in shaky childish handwriting, was one word, "Baba." Daniel's heart seemed to stop, his breath catching as if squeezed tight. "Baba," he whispered, as if speaking to himself in a dream. Isabella nodded, a tender smile like moonlight blooming on her lips. "Blue drew it," she said. "She doesn't fully understand, but she calls you Baba. She sees you as family." That word struck Daniel's heart like a surging wave, sweeping away the walls he'd built around it. He looked at the drawing again, the three little faces beside his own, his chest tightening as if bound by an invisible cord. Daniel, the man who once hid his emotions like treasure buried deep underground, who let his daughter's death, loneliness, and cold walls turn him into a distant shadow, now felt his heart break under the innocence of that sketch. Tears welled up, sparkling like gems falling from the sky, and for the first time in years, he didn't hold them back. The pain he'd buried, the guilt that clung like darkness, the emptiness of long, lonely days, all poured out like a river bursting its banks, washing away the burdens he'd carried. Isabella watched silently, unsure what to say as the strong, steady man crumbled before her. But Daniel's tears weren't just sadness, they were release, like a bird freed from a cage after years, like a wind clearing dark clouds to reveal a blue sky. He'd held so much inside, for so long, and now, in this quiet moment, he let it all go. After a while, Daniel wiped his eyes, looking up at Isabella, his voice still even but brimming with emotion, like waves lapping the shore after a storm. I've tried to protect myself for so long, locking my heart like an iron door no one could open. But this drawing, the trust in those innocent eyes, melted that wall. He smiled, a faint but warm smile like sunlight after rain. Isabella nodded quietly, her eyes shining with understanding. They sat there, saying no more, but between them was an invisible bond, not of blood, but of broken hearts that had now found light together. And so, from the shards of pain, Daniel and Isabella wove together a radiant family tapestry, where love was the golden thread running through it all. Beneath that warm roof, the laughter of Blue, Naomi, and Lynn rang out like a melody of happiness, dispelling the shadows of the past. A wondrous journey proving that, no matter how harsh life may be, compassion and sharing can still create miracles. What do you think of this story? Please leave a comment to share your feelings, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more touching tales from Millionaire Secret, where every moment is a precious gift.